Hey everyone, thanks for joining us once again. Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bellew, sitting here with Tiffany Ritchie.
And Adam Payne over here. Yep. Don't forget me, Josh. I mean, come on. I'm important too.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
You're incredibly important.
You're smart.
Our lives changed when we met 9 years ago.
It's true. Yeah.
Literally, the trajectory of our lives changed.
It was like, it wasn't a crash. It wasn't.
I've wanted to help people. You've wanted to help people all your life, but 1 + 1, boom, it equaled 4, 5, or 6.
And Josh,
Crazy.
where did that really? It happened at a church, at the Christ the Servant Church.
It was actually, we met in a whiteboard room, because I always have to have a whiteboard at Church of the Servant, who has graciously allowed us to office there over the years with Pray Out and other things. But you had no idea what you were doing when you were walking out of the building with me carrying your leather satchel. And you said, would you like a bottle of UltraCur, the original orange lid UltraCur product? You had no idea that I had been dealing with mobility issues and discomfort in my hips for years.
It was
healthy.
To the extent
I'm a green superfoods guy. I don't go through drive-thrus. I don't eat processed foods. I take lots of supplements. I exercise, and I was struggling. 5 days later, I was in great shape. But it was amazing.
You couldn't sit down for more than 5 minutes.
No, I was constantly pacing. You get me in a boardroom or something, I couldn't. I mean, this chair I could do okay in. Any other chairs? Not at all.
So you had, so it was in the socket of your hip.
Both hips.
Both hips.
It was horrifying.
You know, it's so hard for a clinician to get at what I call distal inflammation. Inflammation that's in the tendons.
Like tendinitis and stuff.
I mean,
right.
you don't,
tennis elbow.
there's no capillaries to bring nutrients. You take something orally.
No oxygen, no blood flow.
It's not going to get there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But somehow people that use when we started the whole UltraCur thing, I was just a research scientist, entrepreneur. We officed out of the
Research Parkway.
Research Parkway. You know, it was Presbyterian Health Foundation because it was started with the Presbyterians. And my buddy John Chansey, who's a vet, and we made a big batch of the original UltraCur. He did it in his oven back home. And it was curcumin bound to whey protein. And I just gave away small tubs to friends of mine. And the first guy I gave it to was a retired Special Forces dear friend of mine. We went to Sierra Leone on a mission trip together. He had horrible tendinitis.
He had a difficult time getting out of bed in the morning.
He could put no pressure on his elbows. If he put any pressure on his elbows, it was like knives, he said.
Yeah, how do you get up and down out of a chair?
He showed me. He would rock. He learned how to rock himself into different positions. Mm-hmm. He called me the next morning, ecstatic. He said, "Is it possible that this stuff works so quickly?" He just pushed himself up out of bed the next day. After just taking one scoop the night before, he grabbed his dumbbells and was curling dumbbells. And then he went out to his back porch and was chipping golf balls. He called me as he was chipping golf balls off his back porch, saying, "Hey, Adam, is it possible that this works so quickly? I have no more pain." And I'm like, I don't.
You don't really have a grid for that, do you? I never get surprised hearing this story. So
it was story after story after story. I'm just curious, Tiffany, what was I'm sure you looked at a bunch of Oklahoma guys coming at you and saying, "Hey, we got a curcumin product." Mm-hmm. And were you a little skeptical?
I'm always skeptical. Always skeptical. When it's too good to be true, is it really too good to be true? Yeah, absolutely. And it is fascinating. It's a fascinating product. And, there are a lot of other supplemental companies that are pharmaceutical grade. And they come at me with, "We've got this new curcumin product." I'm like, "But does it match against UltraCur?" I don't know that it does, and unless you can convince me otherwise, no. But it has done everything that you've said. It's given a lot of people relief, a lot of people health.
And you're using the professional stuff.
Yes, I mean I carry the original, but I like the pro. I like the idea of taking less pills because I'm already putting people on so many supplements that the less
easy
that they can get away.
compliance, smaller capsule. It's really cool.
Absolutely,
it's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were.
But I'm curious. I know you have an agenda here, but what was there one patient that kind of convinced you that there was something there with our stuff?
It was that one I was telling you about earlier, the one that
the Ultra Hemp story.
Yeah, the Ultra Hemp. And I think that curcumins alone, has a lot of great, and she may have gotten some really good benefit with the curcumin alone, but I felt like
there's something with that combination there too.
Yeah, there was something that helped with her inflammation, and it sold her on the whole idea of lifestyle and everything else.
Invested in it.
Now she's invested. So I think it's amazing. I think it's phenomenal that something natural from our environment that we could even use in our food every single day has the capabilities of doing something that big pharma can't.
Yeah, so profound.
Ooh.
Wow.
That was a quotable quote.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Josh, okay, take us on the journey of CIRS.
So before we go into chronic inflammatory response syndrome, as I said, all these new MCAS and POTS and all these different 3-letter acronyms and 4-letter acronyms.
Is it all part of
for
the same
diseases?
thing?
Yeah. Well, it's weird because when she was talking to me, and so I guess let's get into that.
I actually don't know much about this, so I want to.
Nor do I. She's going to be our teacher today.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, Tiffany.
So we spoke when we were going to invite you on the podcast, and I just said, "Are you learning anything new, Tiffany?" And you said, "Yes, I've taken a deep dive recently into something called CIRS," and I'm going, "What is that?
I don't know."
So, how did you get sucked into that webinar or that conference, and what got you there? And then how big is this world, CIRS, and how many other, a lot of questions, how many other diseases or conditions are attached to that?
Yeah.
That is a big question.
I know. I'm four-parter. Anyway.
Well, it's kind of like how I kind of fell into functional medicine. I knew I needed to get some continuing education. And in the process, like you're asking me, is there any frustrations or how did you evolve over time? Well, a lot of my patients with these chronic inflammatory syndromes, if you will, like talk about fibromyalgia, POTS, the things that you've already mentioned, autoimmune disease.
And mysterious. So many of them completely misdiagnosed and even hard for a functional medicine practitioner to diagnose, right?
To diagnose and manage, because for the mold, for example, that was a big one for me, that my mold patients, we would get them better. We would get them feeling better, but sometimes they'd have these relapses or we could only get them 70% or 80%. So, that was the frustration with some of my patients, that what's going on? And they trust me and they're looking to me for the answers. And so continuing education obviously is part of that evolution process. So I signed up for a mitochondrial conference with A4M, which is who I have my fellowship certification through.
You're big time.
A4M is Aging and Regenerative Medicine Fellowship. The A4M.
A4M.
American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine.
Yeah, it's a great group.
Regeneration, that's where it's at.
That was the A4M was the first group that we went to a trade show for.
Really?
Yeah. We're down in Florida. We met Joe Parita and some other people you probably are familiar with.
Pam Smith.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's fabulous. So whenever I seek out continuing education, that's my first place to go. And they had one. It's their first conference ever that they did on the mitochondria. And I was like, well, how cool is that? Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and if we can help it recover and regenerate, like we've been saying, give energy back, give the
metabolomics.
Right? Yes, all of the things. Well, Dr. Andrew Heyman was there, and Richie Shoemaker, who I have. I get chills just saying his name because he is the father of mold toxicity. And what they did when they got together is they found that it's a lot more broad than we originally thought, that it's not just about mold, it's about all biotoxin creating a inflammatory response that cannot slow down or stop. And so the signals, and they realized through this process, the mitochondria itself is sending signals to the immune system saying, I'm dying, please come help me.
Wait a minute.
I knew that this was going to get Adam's, like his hair is going to stand up here.
So these are epigenetic signals coming out of mitochondria?
Out of the mitochondria.
Oh, Adam.
And is that because the mitochondria are saying, hey, we're losing our capacity?
We're losing our capacity. We're stunned. We are in a stagnant state. Please help us. So the immune system continues to get triggered to fight whatever this original trigger was.
So are these, what are cytokines and chemokines are the messengers that a cell produces to signal to its environment, to the inflammation or the sentinel cells that are in those tissues that there needs to be an immune reaction.
Correct.
What kind of signal does the mitochondria produce?
I don't know.
But it is significant.
It is significant. And, that's where your expertise definitely trumps mine in all those
I don't know about that, but it's really
100%. But it's been phenomenal to see that in what they did. So Dr. Richie Shoemaker, they have this newer test called the Genie test. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they've isolated all of these haplotypes, these genetic genes that they can see if they've been turned on or not.
Oh, wow.
So of the CIRS genes, I'm going to use that in air quotes because that's the term I'm giving it, these CIRS genes, it's an HLA haplotyping and there's 50 subtypes. So they can go in and look to see if the genes have been turned on. The genes get turned on from some sort of biotoxin.
Okay. Right. So there's a signal that goes to the nucleus and then the cell starts to express that genomic code.
Exactly.
Right.
And then what they found is that you can turn it off. And that's what's been so profound because, like I said, you've got these patients who have these reoccurring issues where they get better, relapse, and it's because that gene never gets
turned off.
Well, Tiffany,
Amazing.
We're going to ask you right now, tell us how to turn those suckers off.
Well, it's probably different.
And I have to say this. I'm going to hit the pause button for a second. You need to touch base with Tiffany Ritchie. She's got a really cool office here in Oklahoma City. The way you can get a hold of her is 405-608-4430, 405-608-4430. If anything Tiffany's been saying has resonated with you about, I want to have somebody that spends an hour with me and then spends another hour with me and really walks through my health history and treats me like I'm a person and not a number, this is your gal.
This is it.
I'm her.
Okay, so how do you turn those things off?
So
I know this is such a simple but hard question.
Well, it really is. It's simple in the sense that they have the protocol. I mean, there is one protocol that you follow.
Really?
And they found a peptide called VIP is what.
Oh, peptides, gosh.
I know. And it's
expensive, but coming down in price, right?
Well,
peptides are actually amazing, right?
They are amazing, but the FDA has actually
have they?
Yeah, they have reclassified, I think 22, don't quote me on that number, but over 22 peptides as dangerous.
What?
So they've pulled several of them off the market.
Really? Although they are still allowing the oral ones done by a particular doctor that you and I probably know. I don't know if I should mention their name, but anyway.
BPC 157 is the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's a great product. I mean, the studies are outstanding. And you're talking about tissue repair, I mean, we're talking about tissue repair, not just inflammation, but the BPC 157. But anywho, VIP is a peptide. Yes, it may be a higher price, but if it can turn those genes off, think of the money they'll save long term.
Exactly.
In treatment and pain relief,
years to your life, your
quality of
family, your
life.
relationships, everything changes when you get well.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of things that have to occur prior to the VIP treatment. And that's where you would need someone like a functional provider to help guide you.
So help us understand those stepping stones before you get to that specific treatment that's going to affect those genes that are being expressed. What things do you want to see as a practitioner before you get down there with the scalpel? And the scalpel, I mean,
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So one, you want to evaluate and make sure that that you are treating the right thing. So what I have my patients do is there's a visual contrast study test that they can do online. And it tells us if they have systemic inflammation and that the inflammation has reached the brain. So if they fail that, they are positive for the environmental factors like a mold exposure, some sort of tick bites, brown recluse, some biotoxin, and they have the symptom criteria. That's when we say go, the green light goes.
Okay, this is starting to get really good. We're going to go into our last segment here with Tiffany Ritchie in just a moment. This is Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bellew. Hey, if you like what we're doing, we like bringing you relevant health content with people like Tiffany Ritchie that really know their way around getting you back to healthy. You can go to ultratoday.com to find out more about us, or wherever you like podcasts. You can go ahead and like us and subscribe. Adam Payne?
Yep. We're going to go into another segment, so stay tuned.
It's just now getting really good.
Yeah,
here.
no, this is really good. So let's, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
Our mission is to take nature's most beloved botanicals and enhance them with our liquid protein scaffold technology. This helps it reach your cells faster and better. With exponentially enhanced bioavailability, you'll feel better every day. Ultra Botanica, the feel-good curcumin.
Welcome back to Ultra Life Today. I would be remiss if I did not give you a phone number to get in touch with our guest, Tiffany Ritchie. You're awesome, Tiffany. This has been so fun. Rolling into this last segment, I feel like we're
in the sandbox playing with the toys right now. 405-608-4430. Tiffany Ritchie, do you want to learn what's going on with your health? Do you want to find out the root cause of what's going on in your life? She has the diagnostic tools to be able to help you actually start out and get a foundation going for your health. She's really into lifestyle. She's really into nutrition. She's really into exercise and all these things as well. As Dr. Royce Bargas said to us, she goes, if people will just do the work, if they come to me and I tell them to do the work, she says, they're going to get well. Yeah. So anyway, Adam, so awesome that we're hanging out here today. Yep.
Tiffany, glad to have you here.
We're in the sandbox. We're talking about the tools.
Chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And then all of a sudden we went into peptides.
And the mitochondria.
And mitochondria. And you were like shocked, Adam, that there's signals coming from the mitochondria. I saw your radar go, whoa, you're a cytokine, chemokine guy, right?
I'm not shocked, but it's... No, okay, I am shocked.
It was revelatory. I saw the look on your face.
You know, we've been learning a lot about mitochondria and cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. We believe, and believe it or not, folks. Believe it or not,
believe this.
Well, I don't know if they really truly believe it, but believe it or not, cancer is a metabolic disease, and it stems from the mitochondria. Dysfunctional mitochondria are signaling to the cell, and that's where the pathology of cancer is coming from. We don't know enough about really what's happening beyond that. There's guys like Siegfried out of Boston College.
Siegfried, absolutely.
Who are taking strides to help us understand what's going on. But by and large, the genomic approach to cancer has failed. And a lot of the approaches to dealing with inflammation have failed until we start to get these models that take into account dysfunctional mitochondria as a contributor to people that are dealing with chronic inflammation. Mm-hmm. So, Tiffany, help us understand how this
and you mentioned a test, Tiffany, that I've never heard of, because Adam and I are big HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, as just a overall body inflammatory marker. You mentioned a new test related to inflammation. What was that?
Are we talking about the genetic test, the Gini test, or the other inflammatory markers? So there's a HLA haplotyping.
That's the one you mentioned. Yes. I'd never heard of that.
So it's looking at the gene that they are making this connection with being a higher.
Yeah, she's talking about whether the cell is actually expressing this gene.
So there are two different tests. The one test is to see if you even have the gene that predisposes you for the CIRS phenomenon.
But just because you have the gene doesn't mean that you're expressing that domain.
Exactly. So you can do the VCS test, that's the visual test. Maybe that's the one you were thinking of. The visual test to see if there's inflammation in the body. And it's a simple contrast study that you do on your computer, $15. Wow. It's super cheap. And that's one of the validation markers that we do through the protocol to see if the inflammation is getting better. So if your contrast starts to improve, then we know the brain is starting to
This is a visual thing?
A visual test.
That's incredible.
Very neat, very neat. But then to go a step further, if you had the money to spend, because it is expensive test, is $750.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm glad you threw that out.
Yes.
Somebody's going to take
you
up
new
on
iPhone.
that.
Yes. But it would be very interesting, especially as researchers yourselves, to be able to see prior to treatment what genes have been turned on.
So that's the $700 test, is looking at which genes are being expressed. And is that over a time frame?
Yes. So prior to treatment, and then after treatment, repeat the test and see if those genes have then been turned off.
Because some of them are stuck on, aren't they?
They are stuck on, and that's why we get this repetitive inflammatory drive.
Yeah, we talk about that a little bit with hemp, and because I believe that cannabinoids are epigenetic signalers, providing exogenous lubrication to the nucleus to allow it to change its expression. Because a lot of time, if the endocannabinoid system is deficient, I think cells have a hard time changing their expression.
Well, here's a challenge for you.
Okay.
So Dr. Andrew Heyman, as he was releasing us from this conference, he said the VIP peptide is the only peptide or the only exogenous intervention that they have been able to find to turn the specific gene off.
Oh, interesting.
Really?
So what if Adam and Josh could put their heads together and find some sort of LPS delivered system?
Well, let's take a look.
Yeah.
If you ever have a patient that is expressing that gene,
I have about 30.
30. Well,
wow.
Yeah, I've been testing them.
So what happens with Ultra Hemp with those people?
I haven't started treatment yet. I've only been testing.
Well, we'd like to do a little informal, open label, clinical with you and this neat patient population, and we'll provide the product.
How cool would that be? It would be our little research.
Yeah.
It would be awesome.
That's presentable.
It is presentable.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And Adam has such a beautiful background in clinical research and patient diaries and all that kind of stuff. Second nature to him. So
let's make it simple. We don't need to make it complicated. We can just look at this gene and see if we're changing the expression.
Yeah, exactly. Very simple.
If it happens, that's profound.
So it is profound.
I'm gonna go a little bit off script here because your doctors basically said this particular gene, this peptide is the only thing they've discovered that will turn it off. But I want to get real practical for people that are watching us. Can you actually change the way genes are expressing simply through diet and exercise?
I'm sure we can. I absolutely believe
and
that.
why is that not measured? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like...
I think they have measured it specifically for CIRS. Now, for other things, I don't know. And to me, honestly, in my inexperienced, self with DNA and genomics in general, I'm assuming that they tested the lifestyle aspect with this gene to see if it turned it off.
Maybe
not.
And
Maybe not.
I'm one of those guys that crazily believes that processed foods and packaged foods and drive-thrus are going to do all kinds of damage as it relates to expressing bad things in your genes.
100%.
Then if you're avoiding those things, you're so far ahead of the game.
Yes. Well, I went down some rabbit holes this last week because I listened to a podcast. Do you know Gary Garrick?
I don't.
No.
He's done some phenomenal things apparently for some MMA fighters.
Oh, now you're talking my language.
Yeah, but he was talking about folic acid and the fortification of folic acid in the United States and how it's mandatory in our wheat products to fortify and enrich our foods.
Interesting.
And so I'm a fact checker. Once again, I'm a skeptic. So I want everything to be based in science because we do, in the functional world, get a lot of pushback from the traditional saying, well, that's not evidence-based, that's voodoo medicine and quackery, whatnot.
Right.
So I always want to second check myself. And so I was checking him, and sure enough, on the CDC website, it said in 1997 that there was a mandate that we had to fortify our wheat products with folic acid. And, Italy said the opposite. There is a ban against fortification with folic acid, and their reason being, I found a study that said, they said, we don't know what the long-term consequences of synthetic
Folate.
nutrients.
Right, as opposed to methylfolate, as opposed to things that really are good supplements.
Right.
We get these synthetic things that are just churned out and added to every single cereal product.
The problem with synthetics is you're never getting just the pure substance. There are always adjuncts that result in the production process. So they'll say 95% folate. The other 5%, we don't know what that is.
Okay, so where were we going with this folate thing when you mentioned, because you did your fact check?
Yes, you were mentioning are these synthetics things, these processed foods, turning genes on and turning genes off?
Absolutely.
I don't think there's been enough research to prove one way or the other because who stands to benefit from the research?
There was a study that came out about 6 months ago in Europe that said for every 25% of processed foods that a person has in their diet, it increases the likelihood of dementia by 10%.
Isn't that insane?
It is. I mean, that's startling. Think about it. If somebody's eating 50% processed foods, they're having a 20% higher likelihood of having dementia later.
And what are the statistics on dementia, now versus 20 years ago?
I think that's why they study this, is because the percentage of people later in life that actually have neurodegenerative dementia, it's so much higher.
Right.
I don't know the statistics, but I'm imagining it's crazy high.
Yeah, I would imagine so too. I'd like to figure that one out.
You have been listening to Adam Payne, CEO of Ultra Botanica, Tiffany Ritchie, nurse practitioner, and one of our local heroes here in Oklahoma City who changes people's health.
So grateful to have you back here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's fun.
So with about 2 minutes left, would you go ahead and give a plea for why people need to come see someone like you, Tiffany? We've talked about this. You do a different type of testing than regular health practitioners do out there that are in that conventional funnel of standard of care. And by the way, you can get in touch with Tiffany, 405-608-4430. But be impassioned for a moment and tell people why they need to come see someone like yourself. Super important.
Well, I believe, like I said before, that I think God has given us everything we need to have a balanced, quality, healthy lifestyle. And we have to take control of our own health. We can't be sheep in the pasture and follow the leader anymore, because the people that we're putting our trust into do not have our best interest in heart. We've got to take control of our own health and be our best advocate for ourselves.
Well, and there's a scripture out of the Gospels where Jesus talks about the blind leading the blind.
Yes.
When you have standard of care in conventional medicine, I've always said to people, and I've said this on many podcasts, it's like, don't be so angry at your conventional MD because they were trained in a very narrow paradigm.
This is all
don't
that they know.
hold them guilty
Right.
over that. It's what they know, right? And you've broken out of that box.
I have.
You've learned new things, new tools that can actually help someone determine where their health is at, find out what's actually wrong, and not just put a Band-Aid on something, you know?
Prioritize yourself and make yourself important. You know, I think that's what people have failed to do. You know, we've gotten accustomed to a conventional, very easy me lifestyle. If it feels good, do it. And like you said, if the consequence is gaining weight, feeling bad, who do we have to blame? Well, there's a lot of blame to pass around, but there are people like us out there who are willing to take the time.
Yeah, you're
to
shining a
teach you
light.
Yeah,
the right
we're going
way.
to do a deep dive on everything going on in our biome. Tiffany, that it is such an amazing opportunity for people. If you really want to dig into what's going on in your body metabolically and genetically and all the other omics, metabolomics, genomics, go to see Tiffany Ritchie. You're going to find a whole cornucopia of wisdom, and it could just change your life.
Yeah, 405-608-4430. You can get a hold of Tiffany. This is Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bell. You hanging out with this guy.
Adam Payne. Thanks
and
for
Tiffany
joining us.
Ritchie. Thank you,
guys.
Tiffany.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll have you again.
I hope so.